Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Roger Heitzig. I'm your club president for this Rotary year. We have a very packed agenda today, so we're going to skip a bunch of things like Happy Bucks and so on. But I would also like to remind all of our speakers today to please stay within your time commitments that have been discussed. That said, I'll run through a few announcements here. This Thursday, we have coffee and conversation at 9:30 at Due South Coffee Roasters. Next week, we have Discover Rotary, and we're going away from the virtual. We're going back to something we had pre-COVID. The generosity of Scott and Andrea. They're hosting at Craig, Golden, and Davis. August 22nd, we have our after hours club meeting. All club members are welcome to attend. It's at 5:30 at the Greenville Center for Creative Arts. And our next meeting, which is 2 weeks from today, we have our own Dee Kivett who will be presenting iCar. So you got a link. I think Scott put these on all the table. We need readers at Alexander Elementary. So please scan the code and sign up. We're trying to get one per teacher at least signed up. So please sign up. Will you all stand and say the pledge with me, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Jim asked me to do a quick recap as to where we stand in our CART contributions. For those of you that are not aware, CART stands for Coins for Alzheimer's Research Trust. It's the little blue bucket you see out in front of you. In 2020, we collected roughly $3,276. The following year, we moved up approximately $200. And then the year after that, this past year, we moved up again about $200, maybe $1 to 50 cents a meeting. But then Jim came up with the idea of Rotary Match, and we started the Rotary Match in 2023, and last year we then jumped up some 40%. So I wanted to make sure you are aware of the fact that we're doing a better job in terms of supporting CART, and CART itself has had a banner year. CART, instead of the roughly $300,000 to $400,000 that they've given to Alzheimer's research, had $1.4 million. They had a Rotarian in the southern state who decided to give a $1 million contribution to make a difference. So CART, instead of giving out 2 grants, decided to give out 5. And if anybody knows the subject matter of any of those there and can pronounce them, you're well ahead of the game. But feel free to go ahead and Google those or give me a quick call. The other thing that they've started, for those of you that find that you just don't have the cash when you go up to the blue bucket and want to continue to participate in CART, they've started something called the Roger Ackerman Circle, who was the man who started CART 25 years ago. And you can go online and it'll automatically ding you $5 or more, whatever you suggest, on a monthly basis. But our Rotary Match, the member of who is going to match anything that's put in the blue bucket for this month is Mr. Wayne Cove. Is Wayne here? No, he is not. Well, I'm not. He's in Jamaica on business. Well, somebody's got to do it. If you look there, whatever Wayne's working on right now, if you take a look at the board there, he is a corporate attorney. He oversees a lot of litigation on the corporate side, but as well as the school side. So if you ever have any questions regarding the structure of a school or even Title IX, he's a good one to talk to. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. If you have any other questions on CART, please see Jim Poirier or myself. Thanks so much.
Hello, Rotarians. My name is Iris. I'm here to introduce our guests today. We've got Jenny Dunbar, Knox White, and Lisa Quinn, members of visitors of the club. If you could please stand and hold your applause until the very end. B. Gotterbarm, visitor of Roger Heitzig. Garrison Smith and Zane Landverlane, sorry, Elizabeth Razor's guest. We've got VJ and Victor Madison Sr., visitor of Teresa Madison and the club. We've got a lot of guests from Mr. Surendra Drain, a lot of guests. So if you guys could all please stand. Thank you. If you could please stay standing. I'm so sorry. We've also got Dick Riley and Betty Farr, Amanda Rambeau, and Megan Trombini. They are guests of Stacy Lomonaco. And we've also got Brian Bure, visitor of the club, Jason Buffy, visitor of Scott Powell. And we also have a visiting Rotarian named David Goff. If you could please stand. And welcome, guests. We're so glad to have you today.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brett Jones. I'm the chair of the Veterans Committee here within the club. And I'm just curious, can I get a show of hands of anyone who's aware that we had a Veterans Committee within the club? Okay, so a pretty good number. Okay, we've had a lot of new members join in the last year, which is one of the reasons I asked. One of the reasons I wanted to come up and present today, to let you all know a little bit about what we do within the committee, and to invite anyone who is interested as well. The committee was started within the club about 10 years ago by Charlie Hall. Many of you know Charlie. And Charlie started the Veterans Committee with the intent of creating a conduit for veterans within Greenville, particularly as folks move to Greenville, for networking, for opportunities for networking, but also to identify and hopefully recruit some new Rotarians into the club. And so that's something that we're working on now, and we continue to do through mentorship with veterans who work with Upstate Warrior Solution, which is Charlie's organization. And our primary kind of conduit to Upstate Warrior Solution is Shannon Sports. Shannon, if you could just raise your hand. Thanks very much. But what we're doing with Upstate Warrior Solution is, as veterans come in, we will identify folks, work with them to, like I said, provide networking opportunities via the club. And we meet on a monthly basis. If you have interest in working with the committee, we're going to be meeting today after the luncheon. So please just come over, chat with me. If you have questions or suggestions about ways that we may be able to engage with the veterans community here in Greenville, please come and chat with us. That's something we're going to be working through over the next year. It's finding some opportunities for further engagement with the community of veterans here in Greenville. So thank you for your time. Hopefully we'll have a chance to engage, but feel free to find me with any questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Dee Kivett, and I am co-chair along with Bert Strange of our Rotary Service Above Self Scholarship Committee. It has been my honor and my joy over the past 10 plus years to be part of this committee where I get to know Greenville's absolute finest students. And I want to take an opportunity today to invite you to be a part of this committee. We are trying to re-energize our fundraising to specifically support this program. In the next newsletter, you're going to see a link and information about how you can be part of a matching challenge that we have set forth. We've got $2,000 on the hook, but we need your match to get the full $4,000 to continue to support this program. So we'd invite you to please read the newsletter in the coming week. And next week, I'll be your speaker. And so I'll be here to hopefully encourage you to give to this program. But today, it's my pleasure to welcome one of our scholars, Mr. VJ Madison. And he's going to share his experiences through service this past academic year at college. I want to share the first time I met VJ during the interview where we were trying to choose who would be our scholar that year. The one thing that went through my mind was, wow, I think I just spoke to my future U.S. president. He is a remarkable and extremely charming young man who, in addition to rocking an absolute 4.0 perfect GPA this past semester in astrophysics, by the way, he has clearly established himself as a leader not only at Clemson University, but in the country. Please welcome VJ Madison.
Thank you, Dr. Kivett, again for your amazing introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Victor Madison Jr. I am a rising junior at Clemson University, and I am a physics major. I want to thank you all for the opportunity to speak with you today. It has truly been a remarkable year filled with academic achievements as well as a bunch of service activities. This past fall semester, I was honored to make the Dean's List at Clemson University. At the end of this fall semester, I was elected as Polemarch, or president, for my Kappa Lambda chapter at Clemson University for Kappa Alpha Psi. Additionally, in December, I was able to begin my research journey under a doctoral candidate who was under the research of the professor Marco Agello at Clemson University. This research consists of applied machine learning techniques for observational tools like the Fermi Gamma Ray Space Telescope for high energy astrophysics. In the spring semester, as Dr. Kivett said, I was able to achieve a 4.0 perfect semester, and I was able to make the president's list. I had the honor of, thank you very much, thank you. I had the honor of presenting some of my research at the University of Maryland for a conference called CU2 MIP, and it was a great experience. Additionally, I was elected as Junior Vice Polemarch for the Southeastern Province of Kappa Alpha Psi. This position is the highest undergraduate elected official in the fraternity, and it's one of 12 provinces. The Southeastern particularly represents South Carolina, Georgia, the UAE, and South Africa. As I prepare to begin my third year, credited as a senior next week, I'm excited to move into my very first department and continue my academic journey. The service this year has been a significant part. I completed many service hours, majority of which come from organizing tasks and activities at a summer camp this summer. However, throughout the school year, I was able to participate in many high schools, colleges, community centers, and retirement homes. Some of these events included strolling for the children and distributing and packaging materials for teachers, and much more. I'm eager to see what this year has to hold for me, and I look forward to continuing my academic excellence as well as making an impact in my community. Thank you all for listening.
Good afternoon. Good to see everybody. At this time, we have a special recognition, and so I'd like to call up South Carolina Treasurer, former Governor Dick Riley, former U.S. Secretary of Education Dick Riley, former State Senator Dick Riley, and former South Carolina House Member Dick Riley. And thank Ms. Betty Farr for being here as well, too. And along joining me will be Knox White, our mayor. So if y'all can come on up.
We do have two distinguished members of our community with our Senator-elect Jason Elliott and Governor Dick Riley, Secretary Dick Riley, all the above. And we're here today to somewhat of a surprise announcement to honor one of your own members of this club and former president of this club. And on the Governor Riley will read his nomination in just one moment. But I just want to say that Greenville, one of the things about Greenville that makes us so different and special, I think, is like Rotary Club. We've always been very international in this community. Diversity is something everybody talks about all around the country. America's more diversified, but Greenville's been this way for some time. And not just the diversity of people from all the world who've chosen to live here, but the way those people have become a part of our community. Our business leadership for over a generation has been very much an international affair with people from Germany, all over Europe, of course, and Asia. And that's who we're going to honor today, because this gentleman has played a huge role in coming here, probably knowing no one in Greenville, South Carolina, and yet creating a company, creating jobs, and creating deep, deep friendships with this community, this Rotary Club, and doing so many great philanthropic things in our community beyond just business, being a part of our community. That's what makes him so very, very special. So Governor Riley, if you could come forward to read a nomination you presented to the governor of South Carolina.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to read the nomination of my friend Surrender Jane And I thank the mayor for his support and for this Rotary Club for also having us at this event. This is my letter then to Governor McMaster. Really, the Order of the Palmetto is the top civilian order that you can get in South Carolina. And so the mayor, the governor issued this award, and he's already issued it. And this is what I said to him, recommending it. Dear Governor McMaster, I'm pleased to support the nomination of Surrender Jane for the Order of the Palmetto. I've known Surrender for more than 20 years and applaud his exceptional contributions to our community. And of course, the mayor has mentioned some of that. Surrender moved from India to Greenville in the 1960s, becoming one of our city's first known Indian residents. He immediately engaged with the Greenville International Club to support other immigrants and promote inclusivity. Surrender's active involvement with Greenville Tech Foundation, including the development of the first student dormitory, highlights his commitment to education and community growth. We could name a lot of things, but I would mention a couple. As an active member of the Downtown Rotary Club, he serves as president and chaired major fundraisers. Surrender's entrepreneurial spirit is evident enough through his successful businesses, the Reynolds Company and the Jane Chemical Limited, which have created numerous jobs and boosted the local economy, as the mayor pointed out. His generous contribution, such as to the Honor Tower project, part of Unity Park, this project, and his leadership in peace and conflict resolution initiatives further demonstrate his dedication to public service. Surrender Jane's legacy of service, leadership, philanthropy make him a deserving recipient of the Order of Palmetto. His impact on our community is profound and lasting. So I was very honored to send that to the governor, and he very quickly issued this order.
Order of the Palmetto. If you come forward, we'd like to present this to you. A bit of surprise. Not bad of them to hold out. This, by the way, has been kept a great secret. So this surprise, watching his expression as Governor Riley began to speak, was something to behold. And also, I understand it was your birthday yesterday. Is that right? Good gracious. Okay. Well, happy birthday too. 80, a young 85. Thank you.
Say something?
Well, this has been a complete surprise to me. And I appreciate everything what you are doing. And I know there are people here a lot more deserving than I am on what you are honoring me for. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Governor. If you're a member of the family, you raise your hand. I know we have a lot of family members here. Yeah, I thought yeah, thank you.
Also, the Weston will thank the Jan family for boosting the. Yeah. And I want to thank the Governor McMaster. So on behalf, as he always says, 5.2 million happy South Carolinians, he presents this, and his office worked so well with us to expedite this and get it done, especially for Surrender's birthday. So thank you. It's now my honor to introduce our guest speaker today, Alan Wilson. Attorney General Wilson is the 51st Attorney General of the state of South Carolina. He was first elected in 2010, and although he looks like he's about 30, he was reelected to his fourth term, except for the hair, but he can work on that. To his fourth term in November of 22. So that's quite an accomplishment. Since being elected, he's focused on keeping South Carolina's families safe, defending freedom and protecting our and their futures. The Attorney General has worked tirelessly to strengthen South Carolina's human trafficking laws, crack down on fentanyl dealers, and protect women and children by fighting against the federal government's attempt to distort Title IX. In November of 2013 and again in May of 2021, the Attorney General was elected chairman of the Republican Attorney Generals Association, so he served in that role twice. Prior to his election as Attorney General, Allen served as an assistant solicitor and also as an assistant Attorney General under then Attorney General Henry McMaster. He then entered private practice before being elected. He started out after law school as a law clerk for the late Judge Mark Westbrook. The Attorney General joined the National Guard immediately after he graduated college. He served in Iraq and he earned the Combat Action Badge. Today, he continues his military service in the South Carolina National Guard. And just last month, folks, he completed a 2-year Master's of Strategic Studies from the U.S. Army War College. He's a graduate of Francis Marion University, the University of South Carolina School of Law. The Attorney General and his wife, Jennifer, have 2 children, Michael and Anna Grace. It's an honor for me to welcome my friend, but more importantly, a friend of South Carolina and South Carolina families, our Attorney General, Alan Wilson.
Are y'all filming me? Is this being filmed? Because I like to move around a little bit, so I don't want to make you work. I'll try to stay in the zone so you can get it. First off, it's great to be back up here with all of you. I was supposed to be here in December, and unfortunately, I got COVID, and so I figured you guys wouldn't want me to come up here and start a super spreader event. So we kicked this thing back to now, and I'm in good health today. But Jason, I want to start with you. First off, you've been an incredible ally in the General Assembly. I have great relationships with members of the House and the Senate of both parties across the spectrum, especially when it comes to issues involving law enforcement and keeping your community safe. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But every time I've ever asked for anything when it comes to public safety, human trafficking, internet crimes against children, victims advocacy, violence against women, you have always been there. And I know the House of Representatives will be sad to see you leave them to go to the House of Lords, but we are so glad, and I was honored to endorse you this past year in your pursuits to represent the people of this community in the state Senate. And so congratulations on that, sir. I'm very proud to continue to work with you. Obviously, I remember being in elementary school and going to the governor's office on a field trip and walking in and sitting around the table of then Governor Dick Riley. And so Representative, State Senator, Governor, Secretary Riley, it is always to be in the same room with you, sir, and have that many titles. We should all be so lucky to have so many titles. And Ms. Farr, it's so good to see you again. Last week, I had it was a happy occasion to be with them at the state Supreme Court, where we got to swear in the first Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court from Greenville. It's John Kittredge, and it was an honor to see you there, sir. And of course, this community is well represented. I think just about everybody in the Supreme Court's from the upstate now. So yeah, it was pretty impressive. So you guys have a lot of pedigree up here. I've been traveling a lot over this past summer, and this past weekend, and the reason I'm telling you this is because when I walked through the doors, some of you said, "Are you going to talk about the Murdaugh trial?" For those of you, that was a small murder trial that happened in the Low Country. My office prosecuted. And if you want to go watch Netflix, there's Netflix, Fox Nation, HBO. They've done all these documentaries on it. It's a fascinating story. I'm happy to take questions on the Murdaugh trial. This weekend, I was the Ohio National Guard asked me to come up and teach an ethics CLE using the Murdaugh trial as kind of a vehicle for demonstrating what not to do when you're practicing law. And so, that's before you get to the murders. So I went up there and I did a presentation up there. And if you ever want me to come in and do a presentation, and I will go through the murder scene, the night of the murders, I will go do the timeline. I know a lot of people followed it maybe in the news or in documentaries. But if you want me to come back, and I know you can't have me come back too often, but I'm happy to come back and do a walkthrough, and we'll make it really fun. We'll have a lot of fun, and I'll do a deep dive on that presentation at that time. Today, I'll take questions on it, but that is not part of my presentation, okay? The other thing, Brett, where are you? You were the veterans chair, right, for this club, Upstate Warriors. I think y'all are partnered with our Valor program, and I don't know if y'all are familiar. How many people here, spouse, either you served in the military or your spouse served in the military? Okay, did you know that we have a program in the Attorney General's office? It's the Veterans Active Reserve Legal Outreach Program, VALOR for short. You can get a free power of attorney or a free will done with our partnership to the VALOR program with upstate organizations, and you can get a free will or power of attorney done. So that's something I like to, as a veteran, as a 28-year veteran of the National Guard, I have a deep love, abiding love for people who've served as well as the families of people who served. And though you may have left your service and no longer have the support of judge advocates, we have an organization that we partner with local and state bars as well as organizations like that to do those services for you. So please, please let us know if you're interested in having a clinic, and we will come up and do a will or power of attorney for you at a time of your choosing. So I'm gonna go ahead and start off. Before I go into, and by the way, Roger, I'm tasking you with the time. You're the time lord, okay? I know, but but when we get to 20 minutes from this point, will you just kind of get my attention, wave the two fingers up, and I know that that way I can budget in time for Q&A. Okay, I want to give you a chance to either throw vegetables and fruit at me or ask me meaningful questions. I'm happy to do either. But before I go into my job as Attorney General, I tell people all the time, being Attorney General is not who I am. It's what I do. Just like everybody here has a title of some sort, I imagine, but it's not who you are. So I like to tell a little anecdote from my personal life. And there's one of my favorite stories of being a dad. And I think a lot of people in here this will resonate with you, especially those of you who are the parents of a daughter. But I have a 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter, currently in high school. And a couple of years ago when they were this is actually about 4 or 5 years ago, I had an interesting altercation with my daughter. I may have told this story and you may have heard it before, but if you haven't heard it, this will give you insights into who I am, not what I do. So I wake up in the morning, my daughter's in the 5th grade at the time, and I'm down in the hall ironing my shirt, getting ready, and I hear my daughter and my wife going fisticuffs. They are yelling at each other. And I'm sure this doesn't happen in any other houses, daughters and moms yelling, right? And all of a sudden, whatever's happening, I'm just trying to keep my head down. I just want to get out of the house and get to the office. And I hear my wife's footsteps beating down the hallway. And she comes into the laundry room where I'm ironing my shirt, and she says, I have asked your daughter, ladies, what is it called? The undershirt that girls wear, is it a camisole? Is that what it's called? Camisole, like little girls wear it. It's okay. My wife wanted her to wear this under her t-shirt. She did not want to wear the camisole. And so my wife comes in, she says, your daughter refuses to obey me. You need to go in there and enforce this. She says, I am always the bad guy. You are always the good guy. And she says, back me up on this. And of course, to she who must be obeyed, I said, yes, dear. And I went down the hall, knocked on my daughter's, she opened the door. She's like, what? I said, Anna Grace, I need for you to do what mom said. Mom asked you to put it on. She's like, Daddy, I don't want to. I said, Anna Grace, just put it on. It's just a camisole. Just put it on. She's like, I'm not going to do. I said, Anna Grace, you're going to do it or I'm going to pop your backside. She says, fine. And she slams the door in my face. Okay. I'm like, you know what? I'm letting it go because she's doing it. All right. 15 minutes later, her older brother and I are in the car. She's in the front seat. He's in the back seat. And we're driving to elementary school. And she is just yelling at me. I mean, like all of her hatred, all of everything about me, she just hates. And she's like, and this is normally a lap daughter, okay? She's usually, I'm a girl dad. She's a daddy's girl. She is going for it. So what can she say that would just gut me? She looks over at me from the passenger seat and she says, I hate you, okay? Now, my son is in the back seat, Michael. Now, what does one kid do when the other kid is circling the toilet? They turn into Eddie Haskell. For those of you over the age of 40, you know who that is, right? Like little wings and a halo sprout above him. And he's like, I love you, Father. I'm like, shut up. Because I just inflames her. She's enraged by her brother throwing her under the bus like that. And then she looks at me and says, okay, hate you didn't get you, Dad. All right, I'm going to say something else. She looks at me and she says, my next daddy's going to be successful. I almost said, that's what your mother keeps telling me. Then my son in the back seat with his halo and wings says, Anna Grace, Father, he calls me Father in front of her, right? Father is the Attorney General. He is successful. And she just starts screaming. I'm like, Michael, shut up. We pull up in front of the elementary school. There's a carpool line. The teachers are getting the kids out of the car, and they're waving the cars on just to keep the line moving. We pull up. The door opens up. But as the door is opening up, I look at my daughter and I say, Anna Grace, I just want you to know that I love you with all of my heart. I says, I want you to be happy. As a father who loves his daughter, I want you to be happy. So if I'm not the daddy of your dreams, if I'm not a daddy that you can love, I will step out of the way and you can have whatever daddy you want. And she begins to sob uncontrollably, crying, Daddy, Daddy, I love you. I'm so sorry. And all of a sudden, the teachers are pulling her out. She won't let go of my arm. And people are like, we got to move. We got to move. And my son's outside the car pointing at her, laughing, in front of everybody. They finally pull her out of the car, and I drive off, and I look in the rearview mirror, and as she's walking into the school with her head buried in her hands, I'm like, win one for Dad right there. So I lawyered her up. So that night, she was back to being a girl, a daddy's girl in my lap, her, and we have a great father-daughter relationship. That's just a humorous anecdotal story about life in the Wilson house. We're no different than anybody else, like any of you. We got kids that act out, and that was my parenting style. But why do I do what I do? That's who I am, but why I do what I do. I grew up in the prosecution arena as an attorney, as a prosecutor. I decided I wanted to be a prosecutor because what ultimately compelled me to run for Attorney General to be the chief prosecutor of the state was a case that I prosecuted in the upstate about 16, 17 years ago. I've told this story a number of times. I'm going to give you the short version of it, but this is the why. It's because of being a dad, okay? That's what drives me. But at the time I prosecuted this case, I was not a dad. I was prosecuting a case in which a young girl between the ages of 12 and 15 had been sexually molested by this man. And at 12 to 15, so a 4-year period, she had endured this horrible conduct. At age 17, she told somebody. By age 19, it went to the solicitor's office, and it got transferred down to the Attorney General's office where I was an assistant AG. It landed on my desk. I went and I prosecuted the case. It was an 8-day long trial. It was very graphic. I'm not going to go into the details. They're not necessary for purposes of this story. But what is necessary to understand is at the end of the trial, the man that had done those horrible things to that young woman was found guilty by a jury. And we got up before the judge. And as the judge sentenced him to 18 years in prison for the conduct that he had perpetrated on this young woman over a 4-year period, I looked over at her. She's trembling and she starts to cry. And as they're taking him out to the Department of Corrections in the shackles and the belly belt, she is crying. And I lean over to her and I say her name. And I say, why are you crying? We prepped for this. Now, she's 19 at this time. We prepped for this. This is what we wanted, right? I thought you'd be happy. She's like, Alan, you don't understand. I'm not crying because I'm sad. And before I tell you anything else that she said, I left off one piece of key information. The man that had done this horrible acts to her was not only a retired police officer, but was the girl's grandfather. Okay. And during those years of abuse, when she thought about telling as a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl, he would say things like her, if you tell anyone, they're going to take you away. Or he would explain to her a reasonable doubt before a jury, and that all he needed was one jury to believe one element or not believe one element beyond a reasonable doubt, and he would walk. He told her that it would destroy the family, would split it apart. He was right about the last thing. Half the family was sitting behind us, half the family sitting behind the defense counsel. Okay? So that is the history. As we're walking out, she says, Alan, I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm happy. You see, for the first time in my life, I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor. And at that moment, it was like a lightning bolt struck me. I remember it distinctly. And I wasn't the only prosecutor. The gentleman who's now the 8th Circuit Solicitor, David Stumbo, down in Greenwood, Lawrence area, he was my co-counsel. And we had law clerks, we had paralegals, we had victims advocates, we had law enforcement investigators, medical forensic folks, we had the court staff, everyone played a role. And what I realized at that moment is that we couldn't undo what happened to that young woman. We couldn't take away her history. But at that point in her life, she came to a juncture in her life to be a victim or be a survivor. And we got to be a part of that decision to where she got to be a survivor. We got to be a bridge from victimhood to survivorship. We got to give a voice to a young woman who had no voice until that moment in time. We got to be a voice. We got to empower the powerless and take it from the powerful. And that right there, that story right there kind of is a summary of what motivated me. And I said, this is what I want to do with my life. The idea of being able to empower people, to protect people. And when someone said, hey, there's an opportunity to run for Attorney General, I had never run for political office before in my life. And I said, you know what? The challenges of leadership are something I enjoy through my service in the military, and prosecution in the courtroom is something that I've enjoyed with the cases I was prosecuting. So why not try to do it at the state level? And so now I'm trying to do, at least my intent is to try to do what I did in that courtroom that day, to try to do it at a macro level with the whole state. So I'm going to start with human trafficking. When I became Attorney General in January of 2011, there was no state human trafficking task force. I'm not taking credit for the task force, by the way, because there was a lot of people involved. It was a bipartisan effort. Republicans, Democrats, people in the middle all came together. We created a task force. South Carolina was rated one of the worst states in the country for prosecuting or detecting human trafficking. We had no mechanism for doing it. We had no human trafficking statutes. A lot of people didn't think we needed a human trafficking law because human trafficking is something that happens in Hollywood movies. It's something that happens overseas, right? At the time, that movie Taken with Liam Neeson was kind of the big movie of the time on human trafficking. It was an action movie. People thought of human trafficking as girls backpacking through Europe, right? Getting kidnapped, thrown in a van and sold in a third world country. But what we quickly discovered, it's worldwide, it's a $150 to $200 billion a year industry, 40 to 50 million victims of human trafficking every year, according to the World Health Organization. The United States is the #1 destination for human trafficking in the world. 1 out of 7 runaways is a victim of human trafficking. South Carolina sits nestled between 2 of the top 20 human trafficking hubs in the country, Charlotte and Atlanta. What runs through Greenville? I-85, right? You guys are on an artery of it, okay? And we worked with the General Assembly. We worked with the folks. We came up, they passed a state human trafficking act. They gave us the human trafficking task force. They started with a modest budget where I was able to hire an executive director. The Human Trafficking Act allowed us to have 11 state mandated agencies, 2 non-governmental organizations that involve victim services. We have 4 federal partners that partner with us, including ICE, the U.S. Attorney's Office, Homeland Security, and the Department of Labor. And then we built that task force as an umbrella task force. From that task force, we developed 12 subcommittees with specializations, right? We started working with other nonprofit organizations. We used to have about 30 people participating. We now have 1,100 individual members who elect to be part of this organization. The beer wholesalers and the Truckers Association has joined us. Why would they do that? Beer wholesalers, they walk in and out of bars and restaurants all over the state. Anyone that, truckers at truck stops get approached by women who appear to be prostitutes, but they're really being trafficked. So having everyone, people in the healthcare community join. Then, in addition to those 12 subcommittees, we started doing regional. We have an upstate task force, human trafficking task force. Your sheriff, your solicitor, Hobart Lewis and Walt Wilkins, very active with it. Incredibly, and all the sheriffs in the upstate have bought into this. So you guys have a regional task force. Help us to go after human trafficking. The 2023 numbers are pretty astonishing. If you look at SLED, there are, in 40 out of 46 counties, there are open human trafficking cases. About 357 cases have been open involving a human trafficker in 40 out of 46 counties. From those cases, they've identified up to about 498 victims. This is in 2023, 498 victims of human trafficking, right? I would say 360 something are male. The vast majority are 392 are male. Okay, the vast majority are female. All right, it is an incredibly invasive thing in our communities, and in the upstate, we're seeing it here. In fact, according to PolarisProject.org, Greenville last year was tied for #1 counties in reports of human trafficking activity. Now, I don't say that to give you guys a failing card. To me, that you should get an A for that, because before no one was calling and reporting human trafficking, but we had, I think Greenville was tied with Horry County for the most reported acts of human trafficking that came in through the hotline. So awareness is going up. People are being more attuned to it. We're able to work with law enforcement, local, state, and federal to go after human trafficking. So that is something I'm incredibly proud of. Our efforts to combat human trafficking here in the upstate have really taken off, and we couldn't have done it without people here on the ground. The next thing I want to talk about, this is something that people say, what keeps you up at night? All right, this is something, I don't know if you thought about this, but fentanyl trafficking is something that keeps me up at night. I began 2024, January 2nd, the day after the holiday, so really the first working day of the year, with a press conference up here in the upstate. Devil in Disguise was the name of a state grand jury fentanyl trafficking case here in South Carolina. This fentanyl trafficking case involved the indictment and charging of 64 defendants, okay? 327 drug-related charges. We even charged some of these defendants who were trafficking in fentanyl-laced narcotics. We indicted them for murder because they knew that fentanyl was actually in the pills and people died. From this drug trafficking ring, we have identified a minimum of 6 related overdose deaths involving fentanyl. There's up to 8 more. Do you know that in one drug seizure, we captured or seized 1.5 kilograms of meth and 1 kilogram of fentanyl? Do you know how much, according to the DEA, 1 kilogram of fentanyl, how many people it can kill? Anyone take a guess? Anyone throw out a number? 1 kilogram of fentanyl, 500,000. I mean, a dust of fentanyl can be used to adulterate or cut another opiate pill. That way they can take 10 pills and make it 50 pills, right? And here's what's going on. Kids in high school, they're being given these pills. People are getting them from the dark web. They're getting them from street corners. They're getting them from friends. It's being cut. And by the way, most of this, if not all of it, is coming from the southern border. It is China and Mexico. The Mexican drug cartels are working. Someone in the DEA once described China as the senior partner in this venture and the Mexican cartels as the junior partner. And they are sending this poison over across the southern border. It's coming up through the major hub of Atlanta. It's pouring into the upstate. We seized a lot of it, but since 2020, there have been 500 kilos that we believe have been trafficked into the upstate of South Carolina. 500 kilos of fentanyl. How much does 1 kilo kill? 500, was that? 500,000. Multiply it times 500. And China knows it. And the cartels are making a lot of money on it. So when you read about some kid who took a pill he thought would give him a buzz, or someone took a pill that they thought might calm him down, and it's been cut with fentanyl and then they die from it, it's destroying families. It's killing people. And that's what keeps me up at night. And so, but the first press conference of the year, the first major bust was that we were able to break this drug trafficking ring up here in the upstate of South Carolina. And it was working with the Greenville Sheriff's Department, the Solicitor's Office, the Multi-Jurisdictional Task Force, Anderson, Spartanburg, a number of other local municipal law enforcement agencies working with us and the DEA and other federal partners. That's what we're working on. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, but also keeps me coming back, because when we take that off the streets, I feel like we've left your community, me and all your partners up here, law enforcement partners, have left you a little bit safer than you once were. So I think I've gone a good bit. How am I, Roger? 3.5 minutes on my timer. Well, look, one of the other things that Jason mentioned, you talked about the Title IX lawsuit. That was kind of a big lawsuit. And I try not to see, a lot of people see a lot of things, and I'll take 2 minutes to talk about Title IX and why we got involved in that. I don't approach this from a political point of view. I approach it from a legal point of view first and a parent point of view second. And so let me tell you what this lawsuit is basically about, and I'll tell you why I've joined it. So we just got an injunction on a federal rule that came out of the Department of Education. And what the Department of Education was doing is they wrote a rule based on the 1972 Higher Education Acts. It was the education amendments for that federal law. And in that, it was kind of based on the progeny of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But it says that you cannot discriminate in education, giving people access to educational opportunities or sporting and things like that in the education arena on the basis of sex. And so on the basis of sex is the clause that matters. And so folks, and they would argue an intent to protect, marginalized classes of people. That would be their argument. I'm trying to give their side of the story. They say, we want to make sure we protect all people. So they redefine the definition of sex to include gender, people who have gender dysphoria or gender identity. And so the rule would basically say that schools who receive federal funding, any federal funding, must accommodate people who wish to go into the restroom or the locker room of the sex that they identify with, and that you must accommodate them based on the pronouns they want to be called by. If the school does not pass a rule that protects and makes that accommodation, the school loses all of its federal funding. Now, people of different viewpoints can have differences of opinion on how we should treat people who identify and have gender dysphoria and have gender identity disorder. That's another conversation. For me is unelected bureaucrats can't rewrite a 50-year-old federal law through administrative fiat. And also, I believe education, whether or not those types of rules should be implemented in a local school, should be done by local officials to accommodate 0.0001% of the population who suffers from that. And so we brought a lawsuit about 2 or 3 weeks ago. It was enjoined temporarily. 26 states currently have an injunction, more than half the states in the country. We brought that lawsuit that prevents that federal rule from going into practice until we have a chance to argue it on its merits. I expect it will go to the U.S. Supreme Court, but for me, it's about the rule of law first, and secondly, for people who have kids in school, having a school that must accommodate a boy, someone who is a biological boy, identifying as a girl, being able to go into a girl's bathroom, a girl's locker room. And if it's an older school, they can't accommodate that. Maybe they have big open showers. Maybe they don't have individual locker or toilet closets. Maybe it's all open. We don't know. But I think those are local school issues, and I don't want the federal government cramming down something that Congress never even passed. So that's my point of view, and I'm happy to take questions or criticisms on it. But that is a hot button issue. You, Jason, mentioned it in my bio. That's something we're currently working on, and I'm happy to take any questions on that, Murdaugh, or anything else. Any questions? Oh, in the back. Yes, sir. Oh, the phones on the prisons. Yeah, that has been a major issue. A gentleman who used to work for me is now Nikki Haley meeting the director of the Department of Corrections, Brian Sterling. He's been director now for, I guess, 7, 8 years, 9 years. He's done a great job. He's been a leader on that issue. I've led with him. We've written letters to Congress. Basically, there's a federal law in the federal prison system. The FCC will allow federal prisons to jam cell phones. It's like an iron dome just over the prison. So what we find is happening in state prisons is gang members. In fact, we had a grand jury case in which gang members were coordinating with the Mexican drug cartels from inside the prison. They were facilitating the trafficking of drugs from behind the prison using cell phones. And they were able to coordinate with people in the Mexican drug cartels to continue making money and profit. And of course, you can flip beds and you can do, you can scrub cells and you can catch cell phones from time to time. But once those cell phones are in the prisons, they're able to coordinate. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a violent riot at the Lee Correctional Institution. And basically in one wing of the prison, you had a Blood attack a Crip or a Crip attack a Blood. It was one gang member attacking another. They called over to a completely other section of the prison that no one knew that had happened. And they said, their guys attacked us, go kill them. And that's what sparked the riot. And so that those cell phones hadn't have been there, those riots wouldn't have occurred. We wanted the FCC to allow, and the federal prisons are allowed to put an iron dome so that cell signals don't get out of the prison. Does that seem like common sense? Well, the FCC won't let us do it because the way the law is written is it can only be done at the federal level. They won't let us do it with state prisons. We want to add one word, and state, right? Federal and state. But they won't let us do that. So we have been lobbying Congress. We've been lobbying the FCC to change the federal regulatory scheme that would allow state prisons to jam cell phones. They have the technology now, and I've seen it, where you can be on your cell phone right here, and you can take a step outside the door of an office and your cell phone goes dead. And then you can step back in and it goes hot again. The technology is that good, but they won't do it. I believe the telecommunications lobby or certain members of the telecommunications lobby have fought that cell phone jamming system. But what they have allowed us to do, and it's not as good as the jamming, we call it whack-a-mole. They've allowed us to implement a program that when someone makes a call, it pops up on a computer system and there's a number associated with your phone, not your telephone number, but like an ID number. And they're able to, once that number pops up inside of a prison perimeter, they're able to disconnect that phone immediately. So that phone becomes basically a doorstop or a paperweight. But they get to make the call first. And so it's like whack-a-mole. You can hit this phone here when it pops up. You can hit that phone when it pops up, as opposed to just a complete dome. So it's better than it was. It's not as good as it could be. But and by the way, bipartisan, Republican, Democrat AGs all over the country have been sending letters saying we got to be able to jam these prisons so to protect the communities. Yes, sir. I'm trying to be. It's 12:52. I'm making sure I don't go over. Yes, sir. I've talked to a number of sheriffs. I travel the state, and every time I go into a community, I try to stop off at the sheriff's office. In fact, I'm meeting with 2 sheriffs in the upstate today. And I asked that question, what is your staffing like? And a lot of sheriffs say they're really having trouble keeping boots in the ground in their offices. They have a lot of vacancies. Sometimes it's a function of pay. Sometimes it's a function of culture. I mean, 4 years ago, the law enforcement took it on the chin, right? We all remember that summer of the riots. I think a lot of that is dissipated. You don't see that as much in South Carolina, but a number of sheriffs have struggled to fill those those shoes, you know, putting people on the streets. And I don't know what it is. I haven't talked to Hobart Lewis up here in Greenville, so I can't speak for Greenville, but some of the more rural areas are really struggling because it's, you know, the pay is local, function of local government. You know, county councils only have so much money. So we try, one of the things that we're doing in the Attorney General's office, we ask for funding. Jason, thanks for supporting it, for a Violent Crimes Reduction Task Force, where we're creating 2 landing teams. Think of like Marines, Special Forces. They go into a county with a massive backlog of murders and violent criminal convictions. Local solicitors, some are fighting like heck to get them moved, but they just can't. So we're going in with our own prosecutors, our own investigators, our own victims advocates, right? And we're going in and we're helping them move those backlogs to, you know, to free those beds up in jails and to get those cases moved so those cases can get prosecuted more quickly. So we're going into rural communities first who need it and who ask for it. We've got 3 circuits identified right now, and we're trying to help them prosecute those cases more quickly. So that's what we're doing. But as far as local tip of the spear cops, gun and badge guys and gals walking the street, you know, I think some areas are doing better than others. Some are struggling. So the first part of the question, let me address that. We actually indicted Paul Murdaugh, the young man who was eventually murdered in the murder trial. He was a victim in the murder trial. He was the young man who was driving the boat that with his 5 other kids that ended up killing Mallory Beach on February 24, 2019. Everyone in the 14th Circuit, all those 5 counties, none of the sheriffs, none of the police departments, none of the local SLED agents, no one could touch the case because they were all recused because of how important the Murdaugh family was. The Department of Natural Resources and the Attorney General's office took the case and within 2 months had indicted Paul for felony boating under the influence, which carries 1 to 25 years. He was going to trial and facing prison time for that accident or for that crime he committed. Obviously, when he got murdered, that case went away. So that was investigated with DNR, and he was indicted by my office probably faster than any other case I've seen. So that was handled. So I just want to make sure we set the record straight. The second part of your question was, so I'm going to answer this broadly because I can't speak with too much specificity, but Winston Churchill once said, democracy is the worst form of government except for every other kind. Right? Now, he said that right after he lost the prime ministership after World War II. I'm going to tweak that to say we have the worst criminal justice system in the world except for every other kind. That's not to say that it's perfect because it's manned by human beings. And I'm not saying that there aren't people who have been falsely accused and gone through the criminal justice system. But our criminal justice system is designed so that it is better that 100 guilty people go free than 1 person go to jail. That's how it's designed. I'm not saying it always happens that way. With that being said, my prosecutors and I, in our office, and I'm speaking for my office alone, we take very seriously. I tell people, I get yelled at because people are like, why aren't you prosecuting so-and-so for doing such and such? I tell people, we don't prosecute what we believe. We prosecute what we can prove beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law before 12 jurors, impartial jurors. Now, I have believed people have committed crimes before, but we could not reach our constitutional mandate of beyond a reasonable doubt. And so we don't do that. When I talk to the solicitors, a lot of the solicitors I talk to and law enforcement I talk to, they take that mandate very seriously. So, I mean, the vast, like if 97 to 98% of criminal charges either get dismissed or they get pled. They pled out where the person goes into court and says, I did the following. Sometimes they get a lesser sentence or a lesser included offense. Only 2 to 3% of cases go to trial. Of those 2 to 3, is it possible that someone's innocent? Of course, anything's possible. But we go to such great lengths that the criminal justice system gives them so many avenues for appeal and post-conviction relief filings. I mean, what do you call a person, a judge who is wrong, their mistake is called reversible error. A criminal defense attorney who is wrong, their mistake is called inefficient assistance of counsel. When a prosecutor makes a mistake, it's called prosecutorial misconduct. I mean, the burden's not only on us. When we make a mistake, we get accused of being unethical, even if it's an honest mistake. So, and that's a burden we want, but we really do move very, not slow, but very with much purpose to not make those kind of mistakes. I don't know that answers your question. I obviously can't tell you what I can't prove a negative. I can't say there's someone sitting in prison right now that has been wrongly accused, and I can't say there isn't. It's very possible, but I can tell you that the process we go through is excruciating to make sure that we don't make that mistake. Okay. Y'all, thank you so much. You've been an attentive group. This is a great club. I was a founding member of the West Metro Rotary Club. We had the five-way, Roger, start walking up. I'm ending. We had the five-way test. Yeah, we had a five-way test. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And will I get caught?
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much. That was great, Mr. Wilson. Thank you. One thing we left off of the introduction of Secretary Riley, he informed me that he was a founding member of the Malden Rotary Club, which is, he didn't tell me what year, but just one last announcement, if you will. Remember, I've said at almost every meeting, there's three things we would like every one of our members to do. And I've made it, or Jenny has made a nice slide for us. One thing, volunteer at Kringle Holiday Village. Two, bring somebody to discover Rotary. We've got one next week and the week after. Three, get involved in your club, a service project of some sort. And then the bonus one, number 4, there is to make sure you have fun. So with that said, let us please stand and we'll do the 4-way test or the 5-way test, whichever way you want to do it. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? To all concerned, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?